a good and interesting topic, which is socioeconomic status, a barrier to education. I hope you guys will stay tuned. I hope you learn something, and I hope your views, your shares, and everything has been taken note. First of all, I wish to give thanks to the following people that have been so supportive. So, Mwila Kalabonga, I see you, Noma Moro, Trina Lukafu, Barbara Banda, my mother, Mrs. Banda, and everyone that I haven't mentioned, Nadia's, everyone. I say thank you very much, guys, and thanks for your support. Thanks for staying tuned, and I hope you enjoy this one too. So, as I mentioned earlier, today's topic is going to talk of socioeconomic status, a barrier to education, and we would first have to know what is socioeconomic status, or what do you mean by socioeconomic status? What influences the socioeconomic status that is on the table? So, from the peak, I wish to get to define socioeconomic status, though I won't use the proper definition so that everyone can get to understand it. And in a layman's language, socioeconomic status is a word that is a combination of two, where you have with the social part and you also have the economic part. So social, you're looking at the society, you're looking at the environment someone is living in, while for economy, you're trying to look at the income that is coming in. So socioeconomic status looks at the welfare of one, where you have that person's life and you also have a picture of their society as well as their economic status. Trying to balance, is this trying to put someone in a proper position that they are able to fight? Are you in? Or what type of life are you living? That's what we're looking at today. So we have different factors that get to influence socioeconomic status, and there are a lot of things that you can talk of when it comes to socioeconomic status that I will try to highlight very soon. So when you try to look at employment, income, education, food insecurity, you look at housing and family structures, you're looking at the basic needs of one. What do they really require? What do they really need in order for their lives to be sustained? And not only that, if you try to look at how someone's socioeconomic status will be put into distress, you're looking at what really is hindering that person from achieving what they want. And in today's topic, as I mentioned, socioeconomic status, a barrier to education, and people may say yes, it is a barrier, and others may say no, it is not a barrier, depending on what picture are you looking at it in. Socioeconomic status affects people differently, and people get to see it differently. I might view it in a proper position that I feel comfortable, and you might view it in a proper position that you feel comfortable with. But are we helping out someone out there in order for them to have hope that despite their social backgrounds, despite their economic backgrounds, they can live a life? What are you doing about it? So specifically today, I'll try to look at education and how someone's background can affect their education, because we know as children they require different things that have to be done differently, and they need to be funded for. They need a hope that something is going to be better somehow, somewhere. And children are the well-being of everyone's life, because we all know we've been through childhood. We all know we've been a child, we've been someone's baby before, and if we never had the proper facilities that our brothers, our sisters are lacking, would we be where we are today? So first of all, I will try to give you an highlight of what I'll look at, or the insights of my discussion today, and I have outlined at least the major key factors that I think would help someone out there get hope or get lifted. So I will try to look at different factors like mental health, or how socioeconomic status affects someone's mental health and putting someone into distress as they are in school, or putting them into distress during their education life. Then I also try to look at education quality, We'll try to look at how gender roles get to play, and we'll try to look at equality in education. As I mentioned, I will start with mental health. And we definitely know when we talk of mental health, we're trying to look at the well-being of someone's mental state. Is it normal or is it abnormal? So usually when we get to look at scientific terms, we usually get to say if a person is termed to be normal, they are behaving according to society's norms, they are behaving in proper accords, that they can be said they are human beings fit to be in that community. So they get to accept the welfares, they get to accept the norms, the customs, the beliefs, and everything of that community, and they're able to live up to it. Well, if we say someone is mentally disturbed or mentally abnormal, which is now going into psychiatry conditions, you're looking at a person who can't abide by the community's customs, the community's norms, and everything. So in today's topic, we are usually focusing on the mental health or the mental status of that child. How does socio-economic status affect a child? Socio-economic status, I should mention, usually we get to find that children that are coming from the low income areas or the low areas that are not well developed or that are occupying people of a low standard in that society, in that community, or in that area, we usually get to find that one, their family capacity is really, really low, that they can't live a life that other people, other children of rural status families, well known families are living. So usually they get to have maybe broken shoes or torn shoes, as you get to mention it. They get to have torn clothes, uniforms. They get to, others get to carry in bags. Should I mention to say plastic bags, sacks? They carry their books in that sack in order for them just to achieve or in order for them to get educated. Has anyone addressed it? Has anyone helped that one who carries their books in a sack? What do we do as a community? We usually get to stigmatize those children. We usually get to point fingers at them. But what else do we do for them apart from stigmatization and apart from pointing fingers at them? Are we helping that child? Are we putting that child in distress position? What are we doing for that child apart from pointing and stigmatizing their carrier bags? And I should mention to say, these children that are coming from low income families or low income areas, they're usually prone to mental health issues and mental health disorders, where you get to find that child may experience low self-esteem, they may experience anxiety disorders, and they may also experience depression. All these three that I've mentioned may come in due to stigmatization that a child is going through. So you put a child into a depressed state because every time they get to do something, they don't really have any motivation, they don't have any inspiration, they don't have anyone to point out to say, I wish to be like him. It always takes them back to say, even if I wish to be like them, my parents can never afford. Socioeconomic status also affects someone's education quality because we get to find that parents can't afford to take a child to a proper education school. Why? They don't have money to pay. School fees are high. And what are we doing about it? We always get to run away from issues that have to deal with education of a child because it doesn't bother us. How many people really want a child to be educated who's coming from an area that they know is a low income area? How many are trying to help those children that are coming from those low income areas? Or what are we doing about the low income families? Do we care about their education? School fees are being run at 500 above, and yet that child's father or mother's income is almost 400 at the end of the month because they are sweeping someone's yard. They can't really afford to pay that child's proper education despite them having that high IQ to say, I can do better, I can do something. In schools, teachers are favoring children that are coming from high income areas or children that are coming from families that are well to do compared to children that are coming from these low areas. I remember back in my time when I was in school, we usually used to have a lot of issues with children that were coming from low income areas, and they would be pointed out. They would be stigmatized, or they would be mentioned to say they were coming from certain areas. And trust me, you would really get to see how other children were affected by the name of their community without looking at their capabilities. Just because they were coming from a low income area, these children were they were always pointed out. Trouble arises, they are the first people to be mentioned. Anything that has to deal with violence, they were the first to be mentioned. So low social or socio-economic status during these low income areas really gets to affect a child's mental health. And not only a child's mental health, I should mention to say, we usually get to see that 3 times, or children that are coming from low income areas are 3 times more likely to develop the mental health issues that I had already mentioned of compared to those that are coming from high income areas. And not only that, I should also mention to say you get to find that certain things are really tried and certain things wish to be changed, but we're always getting to run to the same old stuff. What are we doing to change someone's abilities? My third point is gender roles and how gender roles get to affect someone's education. We usually get to notice that children or parents that are coming from low income areas have a preferable sex to be educated first compared to the other. Why do I mention that? Our mentality or our mindsets have not yet switched to say every child's education is is of importance in our nation, or every child's education is worth a support. We may try to advocate for equality, but we're always living a life of equity when it comes to the education system. Not only the education system, even our day-to-day talks are really favoring a certain sex compared to another. We are trying to sideline, yet we are trying to improve to attain equality. But are we achieving the equality that we are talking about in our day-to-day lives? I should mention to say, when I mention of gender biasness or gender roles, we are looking at a position where a girl child and a boy child are put in the same area, and you try to weigh whose education is worth more support. We usually get to remember stories that have been mentioned to us, or stories that you have heard or you may have known of, where a girl child's education is always put second compared to a boy child's education. I should mention to say education has got no sex. Education carries no weight to anyone because everyone's education matters. And I should mention to say, usually when we get to run back to mental health, if a child's mentally disturbed, we get to notice there was a survey that was done some time back where children were taken from different communities and they had to test for a certain hormone which is cortisol. So cortisol is a stress hormone. I guess people that are into medicine and science will really get to understand that. So it is a stress hormone that suffices or that shows itself usually in a person that is overstressed. So it accumulates in high volume compared to its normal capacity. And when tests were done on children that were coming from low income areas and those that were coming from high income areas, they had to find out to say children that were from these low income areas had high presence of the cortisol hormone. So not only that, imagine a child who's coming from a low income area that's a female and who has a brother. Those two, the parent has to pick one who has to be educated first, because they can't really support both their education at the same time. So meaning that parent has to choose whose education has to come first and who may later be educated. But what happens in a case where that child grows, passes her grades? When I say passes her grades, I mean that child has missed school and her age doesn't get to allow for her to attend school from an early starting or an early phase, which may be grade 5, grade 6, or grade 7, because that person has passed the age for her to attain that certain grade. But because the parent had to make a choice, what happens to that child? So usually when we get to look at the socioeconomic status of a family, different variations are done and different things may be talked of at different phases, at different times, and at different points. But what happens? It affects everyone. It affects the child, it affects the parent, and it affects certain decisions, including the nation, because every child's well-being and every child's growth is valid to the nation. And I mentioned every child's education, every child's health, and every child's stay on earth is valid in that nation. We have different talks in our country, different variations or different discussions that are put on table for enhancement of children participation, children protection or child protection, child safeguarding, and we have a lot of stories that may be running around where we hear no, education is for free, education is what we do this certain things will get to change. But to what action are these promises being made to? It all starts from changing someone's life. I should mention to say, despite you coming to a social economic status that is low, every child's abilities are not valid in their IQ, or they are not valid in their abilities to education. What do I mean? At times, certain mentalities that have to be changed in us as children are, if you are coming from a low income or a low social family, you may do greater heights, and trust me, you may be our next president, you may be my doctor, you may be someone's doctor, you may be someone's health caregiver. It doesn't mean if you are coming from a low income family, you are coming from a low social background, you are coming from a poor family, or you are coming from a low income, low home support, no motivation, no what. It doesn't mean it all ends from there. You can change your life, you can plan your life, you can do better heights. Certain mindsets that are there today is, if I don't eat well, I can't be educated. If I don't eat well today, I can't live a life my friend is living. I remember when I was in grade 8, my uncle always told me I wasn't supposed to watch TV. He always told me, don't watch TV because that's not your TV, that's my TV. Trust me, it always clicked into my head and it always made me so furious, because I would want to be in a position where I watch TV like my friends had. There are talk shows in class mentioning of a lot of cartoons, mentioning of different TV shows that were happening by then. And I never had a platform where I would watch TV freely or watch TV to a limit where my friends were talking about it so much. It might have affected me But I always had that zeal to say, one day I have to own a TV, one day I have to own a phone, one day I have to own something that is going to be of mine. That always gave me a hard time because I had to work hard, I had to push, I had to make my own hard and efforts in order for me to be somewhere. It never really took me back. And to my point now, I get to advise every young teenager, young youth, or a young fella out there that is in a position where you get to think, because you're coming from a low income area, you're coming from a low social background, you're coming from a low family status, it doesn't mean your life ends. Actually, it is the beginning of your life. The different stories that may have not been discussed are what happens, or what do we get to say of those children that are coming from high income areas and yet they perform poorly at school. Yes, there are some, same as those that are coming from low income areas or the low socioeconomic status backgrounds. Every child is affected in a certain way, and every child needs support in every certain way. Low socioeconomic status may be a barrier to a certain extent, but there are those that are coming from well-to-do families and yet they don't even have any education. It's all about your abilities. I remember my friend once mentioned to me to say, you require knowledge and not education, because you may have the knowledge, she may have education, but she may not use her education, you may use your knowledge. Today I tell you this, young fellas, my brother, my sister, my friend out there, if you are watching this video, your education can never surpass someone's knowledge. Your knowledge carries more weight. They may have the education, but your knowledge carries more weight. That you should always remember. And not only that, allow me to end my video with a certain point that I wish to highlight, and I hope someone may be motivated out of that, because we may talk of what support the government is giving, what support is who giving, but one thing you should always remember, a proper choice of friends gives you a happy smile. A proper choice of friends who always enlighten your mood. Your choice of friends matters in our day-to-day lives. Your choice of friends matters in your future. Your choice of friends matters in your education. We have a lot of people that have done so much great works in our nation today, yet they came from the low qualities of life, and yet they are on our top. That should save you as a motivation. You should always remember your social background has nothing to do with your education. Your knowledge carries more weight. And it is for this reason that I wish to tell you today that our mentality of saying education is a key to success should never surpass our brain, because education is an aid to success. What you put in should help you build your future, build your foundation, and get to know your knowledge is what makes you to be a great person. My advice to families or to mothers, fathers is spend some time with your children, spend some time with your family, because day-to-day talks with your children gives them an inspiration, gives them a motivation, gives them a reason to give or to live and to push for greater heights. It is the stories you get to share with them, it is the stories that you get to tell your children that gives them the motivation, that gives them the zeal, that gives them every inspiration and every reason to push forward and forward. Parents, get to share some time with your friends, share some time with your children, and always know our day-to-day talks with our children always gets to build up their motivation, their inspiration, and their day-to-day lives. Children, let us work hard. Always remember your socio-economic status has a role to play in the cycle, but your education matters. Your school, your uniform, or what grade you're doing has got no role to play in affecting your education. Put in your best, put in your own efforts, put in everything you have, and you will sweat out of your sweat. I should mention to say socioeconomic status is a discussion we may all look at in different angles. But today, I just thought of encouraging someone out there to say your economic status should not affect your mental health. Stigmatization will be there, finger pointing will be there, stereotyping will be there, everything will be there. But what happens to that child? What happens to that brother? It may be a barrier, yes, but let us push in. Education is not always about sitting on a table, sitting on a desk, sitting on a chair, writing notes. Education is everywhere. Education is in our society. Education is up there. What you need is a full mind full of knowledge that you are able to make a change. Remember to like, remember to share. It is Ryan Banda. I love you so much.
I've made this video. But come on, look. It's not that I don't look at good. Yes, education is the key to success. But not every successful person, not every billionaire in this world has education as a key to success. There are people who have talent. There are people who can provide services. There are people who are businessmen, business ladies, business women, but they are making it in life. They are becoming successful. Yes, education is optional, but knowledge is mandatory.
Personally, I think socioeconomic status is a barrier to education and greatly affects one's education in the sense that just like we have different names, different faces and everything, so do we come from different backgrounds and different families. There are other children who are lucky to be born in wealthy, or let me say rich families that can afford to support them through school at any level of education they desire. And there are some of us who are born from poor families that cannot afford to take their children to school.